Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming our esteemed group of panelists. First and foremost, Mr. Sushil Modi, former Deputy Chief Minister, Bihar. We can do with a much bigger round of applause, come on. Mr. Rajiv Kumar, Senior Fellow and Economist, Center for Policy Research. Dr. Jaijit Bhattacharya, Partner, Infrastructure and Government Services, KPMG. And as our moderator, we have Mr. John Elliott, Correspondent, Asia Sentinel. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me? Yes? Good. Well, welcome, everybody. Welcome, everybody. The session was originally called The Politics of Development, What Really Works with Masses. And we changed that because I wasn't sure whether the Pope had to be consulted for that one. We changed it for the people. But I think what we're really looking at with this session is what will really bring everyone into India's growth story. That's the problem, and that's the thing that we need to tackle. We've got a splendid mix of people, as you've heard. We've got a politician, Sushil Modi, who not only has been Deputy Chief Minister of Bihar, but also significantly was the chairman of the State Chief Ministers on GST, which is... Finance Ministers. Yes, Finance Minister, sorry, on GST. We've lost our investor, but we've got a consultant and we've got an economic pundit who's worked for the government and FICCI and ICRIA. And then me, I'm a journalist. It says Asia Sentinel, but actually I write a current affairs blog, and I've been here about 20 years. The last election result showed the need for growth opportunities, and not for dynastic largesse. We clearly can't leave the poor uncared for, but on the other hand, there was a clear need for growth and for policies which would get opportunities going. And that needs a mix which is difficult to get. I think there's been too much focus on headlines, on reform, like FDI, GST, with all respects to you, Mr. Modi, and the land bill. What's really important in this country is not those reforms, vital though they are, but what is needed is to make the country work better, to make it operate better. And that's what Mr. Modi, Narendra Modi, was elected to do. And we can look at, without getting into the politics maybe, how successful that has been, to transform how India works. And that means building roads, building education, improving the healthcare, the telecoms, the digital technology, and all those things that make people involved and give opportunities and spin off into jobs. Yesterday, there was a all too brief few words from Ravi Lal, the banker, who talked inspirationally about how mobile banking and Aadhaar would make India delivery of financial services beyond anything else in the world. One of my sons works for MasterCard in South Africa and is involved in this sort of thing through credit cards. And I emailed him and said, hey, do you agree? And he said, yes, this is what India is going to be in the lead in this if it all comes together as it should do. The key behind all this is detailed implementation, not just dreams like we saw in the papers this morning of 10% growth for the next few years, which will get rid of poverty by 2032. Those dreams have been around for far too long, and it's easy for governments and some speakers on this platform yesterday to produce all these dreams. What's needed is detailed focus and detailed execution and implementation, and that's what we're going to discuss. The idea is that the introductory remarks will be 2 minutes, but we're not going to do those. We're going straight into question and answer. And Mr. Modi, can I start first with you? I went to Bihar, as I was mentioning just now, during the election campaign last November, and I traveled a bit. And the roads in particular in Bihar were amazing, the village roads. I was in Madhya Pradesh a month or two later, and the village roads there, as people say, you could almost land an aircraft on them. And the village roads in Bihar are absolutely astonishing. Started, of course, when you were Chief Minister, when you were Deputy Chief Minister with Nitish Kumar. That can still be mentioned, I assume. But there wasn't much entrepreneurial activity. There was not much entrepreneurial activity. Along those roads, they were nice roads, but there wasn't business activity. There wasn't an entrepreneurial drive. How do you combine the two? How do you combine what's already been started in Bihar into the sort of jobs and entrepreneurial activity which is needed?
See, when in the year 2005, Mr. Nitish Kumar became Chief Minister along with BJP, I was his deputy. And if you see the history of Bihar, prior to 2005, you can say it was like a dark age for Bihar. And Bihar was known for all the negative things in this country. And so it also got a synonym of Jungle Raj. So law and order, development, deindustrialization, no electricity, all these things were there in Bihar. So when Nitish Kumar and BJP, they came into power, we tried to, we always used to say, governance, governance, and governance. The most important thing for any state or for a country, or at least in states like India, the most important thing is governance. If there is a good governance, you can achieve anything or everything. So what we lack in this country, or used to lack in this country, that was misgovernance or governance. So BJP, along with Nitish Kumar, we tried to put Bihar on the track of governance. And the topmost priority was given to law and order. If the law and order is not good, nothing can help, nothing you can achieve in any part of this country. And then the roads. And during my period, in the 7 years period, we tried to change the image of Bihar. But regarding industrialization, because Bihar is a backward state, there was a lack of electricity, lack of enterprising. People are enterprising. But if you think as an entrepreneur, so that was lacking. And the biggest hurdle in a state like Bihar, Mr. Munjal must be knowing, there is a problem of land. Land is very fertile in Bihar. And we will be surprised to know that Bihar is having a density of population 1,400 people per square kilometer. The average of this country is about 400 to 500. But in a state like Bihar, about 1,400 or 1,500 people are living in per square kilometer. And the land is very fertile, but the land are fragmented. The farmers, they're having small holdings. So the biggest hurdle in Bihar is the land, as far as industrialization is concerned. But then electricity and the enterprising people, because it has a bad image, very few people dare to come to Bihar. So these things were there. So when you visited Bihar, you found good roads in Bihar, but not much activity.
Good schools as well.
Yes.
I found some good schools as well.
Good.
Education.
See, it takes time. So when we came into power in Bihar, if you compare Bihar prior to 2005, and when you compare Bihar after 2005, you'll find a complete sea change. So naturally, in every field, we were lagging behind. But I can say, and when we were in power, we tried to bring about a lot of change. And that's why people, during 2010 elections, people gave a mandate with a massive mandate that people gave in 2010. And the same government was elected from 2010 to 2015.
But if and when you're Chief Minister of Bihar, what would you do, very briefly, what would you do to make things happen? What would you do to implement, to change the system of governance so that you really get delivery?
See, I mentioned earlier also, governance, governance, and governance. That is single formula, governance, governance, and governance. Governance means everything, either road, either electricity. So good governance, if there is a good governance, and transparency, and there should not be the chief minister or the ministers, there should be transparency in decision making. There should not be corruption charges. And people should feel that there is a government which is taking care of each and every issue. For example, when there was an earthquake in Nepal or in Bihar, Narendra Modi telephoned me. I was in a area of Bihar. The Prime Minister of India giving a call to Chief Minister, giving a call to Sushil Kumar Modi that earthquake has taken place and do these things. So this type of leadership is required. Either there are floods, either there are accidents, there is some problem, any issues. So these things are required, so there is no magic formula, there is no formula. So I think the good governance and everything flows out of good governance.
Thank you. Rajiv, that leads rather neatly onto a question I was going to ask later, but let me ask it now. One Mr. Modi rang the other Mr. Modi over the Nepal earthquake. Do you think that the Prime Minister is doing enough to monitor what's happening? I mean, part of what's needed is strong monitoring from the PMO, driving decisions and driving implementation. From your experience in government and from working for the CII and for FICCI, do you think that enough is now being done to drive decisions and to drive implementation?
John, let me answer this question in two parts. First, with all due respect to Modi Saab and to the other Modi Saab, it is true that good governance is the necessary condition for growth and development in this country. But as we economists like to say, it's not probably a sufficient condition. And the thing that you mentioned, Modi Saab, is I think the greatest example. In India, today, agriculture cannot be fixed by just good governance. You need some huge structural, conceptual changes in agriculture for Punjab to stop growing paddy and for Maharashtra to stop growing sugarcane and for Bihar to become the rice bowl of the country. Now, this cannot be done by good governance alone. So good governance is good governance, and competitive good governance is better than competitive populism, which is what we are moving towards. And that's the best thing that is happening from 2014 or even earlier. That today the chief ministers in this country and the successive governments will fight elections on the basis of showing results on the basis of good competitive governance and not populism. And so therefore you are moving towards from entitlements to empowerment. So that's my first answer to your question.
How do you get the states to make those changes?
Given that, I think Mr. Narendra Modi's effort at the moment to create a development state in India by carefully monitoring some flagship projects, I think is very commendable. And it will produce a kind of result, it will produce some progress, which will be quite remarkable, But I'm afraid it may not be sufficient to meet the very high aspirations of the people in this country. I mean, you need, for example, a job machine in this country which will churn out 1 million jobs a month. And I'm afraid by focusing only on implementation and monitoring and seeing at the same time that your exports decline for 16 months continuously will not actually produce a result. So your question to me that whether it is being monitored enough or not, yes, it's being monitored enough, but I'm afraid that monitoring on some specific projects and to believe that India, the macroeconomy of India, is a set of projects and does not need a macroeconomic analytical framework, I think will be misplaced. We need an analytical framework, a vision towards which we have to progress with a series of well-monitored projects.
Yes, I've been wondering since in about 2 or 3 weeks' time, I'll have to write an article, if not 1 or 2, on Mr. Modi's first 2 years. And I was wondering whether one could argue, leaving GST and land reform out of it, whether one could argue if all those schemes, digital, jobs, startup, Make in India, which is more a brand than an operational scheme, and so on, if all those really worked, would in fact Mr. Modi have achieved Narendra Modi have achieved what he should have done in his first 2 years? I mean, I pick up your point that just schemes aren't enough, but do you think that Jaijit, that if he manages to make those work and really gets them spread through the country, financial inclusion, digital, and all the rest, that he has achieved he will have achieved what he was elected to do?
So I think I'll take it off from where Rajiv left, is that the output will be achieved if those tech parks are done. An output would mean that the infrastructure is getting laid out. You will have the railway lines coming in. Last year, $15 billion of capex was spent on the railway lines. And obviously, there will be a multiplicative effect of that kicking in this year, right? So that much more economic growth will happen, that many more jobs will get created. And yes, the output will happen. But will the outcome be achieved? And that's what Rajiv was hinting at. Will we get sufficient number of jobs? Will we have less number of infant mortality? Will we have better nutrition levels? Those are larger questions that needs to be looked at. Now, if you just look at the first part, the jobs part of it, I'm not entirely sure what needs to be done to even generate the jobs. If we have a white sheet of paper and we say, here is a plan to generate jobs, in today's technological context, it's getting very perplexing to find out what will lead to jobs. Because in your primary industry, which is essentially agriculture in our country, jobs are disappearing. They're already not there, and we're just having people staying in the rural areas without jobs. They're obviously trying to get jobs in the cities. But in the secondary industries also, jobs are not coming in. The job intensity of capital investment is reducing day by day. So you can bring in a multi-million-dollar factory, but it's not going to employ that many number of people. If you look at the services industry, how many of us are really going to a ticket counter and buying tickets? We're not buying tickets anymore. We're buying it over the app. So we've already destroyed jobs in the service industry. If you look at high-end jobs, which is programming, and we're looking at BPOs and KPOs, again, there are cognitive technologies coming in, which in the next 3 to 4 years will become very, very stable. And so your BPO jobs will be questionable. Your programming jobs will be questionable. If you look at services such as driving, we all know driverless cars are coming in. And in 3 to 4 years' time, all of these technologies are going to mature at the same time. And I think most of the people I see here sitting will have drivers at home, and you would prefer buying a more expensive driverless car than hiring a driver. You look at all the Uber taxis and so on, you'll have those job destruction happening because they will move to driverless vehicles. And therefore, coming back to the key point, the outcome of will I get jobs is a question that not just India has to answer, it is a global question. Because we don't know how to proactively employ people in the current technological context.
But the net result is that there's not going to be 1 million new jobs a month.
I think if you maintain a jobless growth, that itself will be quite an achievement. I think it will be a job-destroying growth, given the technological advances that are happening.
But I want to, sorry, Munisa, but I just want to answer that is not an option for India. To not have 1 million jobs a month.
But there are not. I haven't found any conversation where.
No, but the question.
Let me interrupt a second. I've heard no conversation where anybody's got anywhere near a solution. We were talking about it outside just now, and we had a few 100,000.
But this is the
a year.
No, but this is the issue, which is that unfortunately in Delhi, and I suspect even in other capitals of our provinces, employment is still not the center point of our conversation and of our attention. And that has to become, and may I just add here, that the only reliable, quasi-reliable statistics that you get on jobs is once in 5 years with the NSSO, the thick round. The Labor Bureau comes up with the quarterly estimates of only 8 industries, which has suddenly said recently that in October to December, quarter, we have actually lost jobs, then created them. So the first thing that you have to start off by doing is for all our political leaders to insist that we want good employment statistics and jobs and center our attention on jobs. Unfortunately, in this country, for some reason inexplicable to me, there is no conversation on jobs.
Well, it's because demographic dividend sounds such a marvelous idea, and with all respect, and I've lived here enough years to make a few rude remarks, announcing something is enough in this country. You don't need to do anything about it. So you say demographic dividend, and you assume these guys are going to be employed. You're now the Chief Minister of Bihar, or going to be. Are you going to have riots in Bihar, or are you going to find the jobs? Are you going to have riots in Bihar by the unemployed youth, or are you going to find the jobs?
See, this jobs were always a problem in a country like India. But the central government is doing its best. And by this is Skill India. Because employment means in general people feel the government jobs or the jobs in the private sectors. But what you call self-employment. So lakhs and lakhs of people, by this Mudra Bank scheme, you must have heard that the government of India has launched a Mudra scheme. And more than 2 crore people, 2 crore people have been provided with the loan between 10 lakh to 2 crore. So these things are going to have an impact, like this Skill India. There is underemployment. People are employed, but they are not getting good wages because they are not skilled. In Bihar, lakhs and lakhs people, they migrate to Haryana, Punjab, and other parts of country. But they are unskilled labor. If they are skilled, they can earn more and more money. So the government of India, in the last 2 years, the kind of schemes they have launched, the kind of flagship programs that have been launched in this country, and this Make in India, it will have its impact. It started having its impact. It's FDI. You want money. Only there are 3 sources of money: private sector, public sector, and FDI. So I think we should not make a judgment of any government in its 2 years of term only. But he is making his effort. Agriculture field. If there is a good monsoon, there is a good agriculture, so naturally lakhs people will get employment in the villages, in the agriculture field. So there are problems. No doubt there are problems.
Are you satisfied with that answer?
Skilling the people, Skill India, making more and more employable, these are the only solution. There are no ready-made solution that you can create jobs out of nothing. Only these things can create jobs.
Rajiv, are you happy with that answer?
No, I'm of course, I'm comforted with what Modi Sahib has said. And I think I'm more comforted by what's happened since January this year in here. And I tell you what, let me just start off. The first time in my memory, a budget has employment-related subsidies on offer. The government of India has, for the first time, said, Mr. Jaitley in his budget has said, that the government will subsidize industries who will give internships and create new employment in their industry. All the time there used to be only investment-related subsidies, capital-related for the first time. And the 2 schemes that have been launched, the Startup India and the Stand-Up India, are, I think, relate precisely to what Modi Sahib has said, which is self-employment. And the understanding seems to be in this country, in this political leadership, and I think it is worth a try, although I'm not sure that it will, must necessarily succeed, is that both the corporate sector, private corporate sector, and the public sector will not create the number of jobs that you need in this country. So therefore, what you need is to create what Mr. Narendra Modi says, job creators rather than job seekers. And I think to that extent, yes, my only issue here is that what you need is a whole, again, where governance alone will not help, is a revamping, for example, of your education sector. Now, given the current education system that you have, I just met a very leading industrialist who said that in Orissa, there are such large number of private universities. Each one of them produces engineers who won't even know how to spell engineering. Now,
you need
unemployable people. Now, the whole education sector. So I'm emphasizing the fact that what you need is to think completely in some areas, you need to supplement good governance, some with new, out of the box, but at least new, bold thinking, without which you will not be able to do justice to what you need.
Revamping the educational sector. Wow. That's not going to produce
No, but
jobs
you have
in the
to
next
do
few
it.
weeks.
I tell you have to do it because, and to leave the education sector to become an area of ideological contestation, which is what it is almost becoming, will be a complete, disaster in this country. And, and if you look at the successive Pratham surveys, it is frightening to note that the quality of education is actually deteriorating in the rural areas. The number of children in class 8 who could answer class 2 questions has actually gone down over the years rather than improved. Now, education, Skill India, very good, but how and for what?
Jaijit, you wanted to come in?
Yeah, I just want to put down that this is not a commentary on what the central government is doing. I think let's just step back and look at the dimension of the problem. It's a governance problem. And the dimension is, if I look at what China did last week, they decided to retrain 1.8 million steel workers. That's almost double the size of the number of people employed by entire Indian Railways. So imagine if you take out the entire employees of Indian Railways and double it and try to retrain them, and retrain them into what? Will they start programming the next day? They won't. So that's the magnitude of problem we're talking about. Now, is it a central government issue? No, it's not. It's a complex governance issue which goes from the central government to state governments, to municipalities, to the schools. And therefore, if we need to have some way of rapidly retraining these people, that has to start from a primary education. And you also need to have a rapid reskilling infrastructure, which probably has to be technologically enabled. Because you can't train 200, 300 million people overnight. As of now, we've got 480 million people in the workforce, right? Out of which, as per official statistics, only 4% unemployment is there, which is again a little bit questionable because a lot of it will be underemployment. Now, when we move forward and we are saying so many more people will be coming out of that filter and the true unemployment will come up, and by 2022, 200 million more people will be joining the workforce, which is more than the entire population of Pakistan. What are they going to do? Is there any industry which is going to employ them? I think the only way out is what the central government proposed, which is Startup India, Stand Up India. But is that sufficient? Is there any other third option? And that is the question I'm posing, that there is a larger problem. I think the government is doing enough, but more needs to be done.
We've got 10 minutes left, and I'm going to open it up for questions in a moment. But before we do that, one more thing. Make in India. I'm going to ask you about this. Make in India is a great brand. I mean, it's one of the most incredible brands I've ever seen started. No foreign delegation dares to come to this country without talking about Make in India. No minister, no politician, you've just mentioned it, no politician speaks for more than 5 minutes on the economy without talking about Make in India. But it's only a brand. It hasn't achieved very much yet, I would argue. It certainly hasn't achieved, in my view, but you're the economist, so please correct me if I'm wrong. It certainly hasn't achieved the boost in FDI that Amitabh Kant, who was here yesterday, would claim, because FDI moves more slowly. So you can't have had a surge in FDI from a scheme that started 18 months ago. But do you think it can actually solve? It's a brilliant. It's really another name for invest in India. It's really another name for take account of India. And in that context, internationally, it's been a great success. But on the ground, any results?
Well, I mean, the test that you mentioned with the FDI, there's been a 39% growth in FDI in the 1 year. Now, which is huge.
Yeah, but those schemes will have been in the pipeline before the scheme was launched.
Well, no, but the point is that they have fructified this year. The problem the problem is that a large part of them have been in equity investments, in ongoing ventures like Flipkart, and like Snapdeal,
and very few in manufacturing.
And very few in greenfield capacity expansion. That's the problem. But the Make in India is a great brand. It is too early days to judge it at this time, evaluate it. My only problem with Make in India is that I would rather have the slogan, employ in India. My persistent attempt has been for the last 3 or 4 years to tell our political leadership that your only priority and policy objective should be to generate employment, irrespective of how you do it. Remember Deng Xiaoping, you don't mind the color of the cat as long as it produces jobs. And that is what you need to do. And unless you say that every minute, and I've been pleading with some of our leaders saying, please don't talk about growth, 7.6, 8.6 fastest growing, talk about jobs. Because the young people that you've created there with a median age of 26 are now wanting that and nothing else. And just one last thing which I want to say is that the scales that Jaijit mentioned are so enormous that unless you take Nandan Nilekani's advice seriously, he's written this wonderful book, Rebooting India with Parul Shah, you have to use modern technology, for example, in education. There is no way that you can have a model which is not clicks plus bricks, and you have to use that. So I think those are the ways of innovative thinking, and it will come to us because we are great innovator thinkers if we concentrate and focus on the right objective, which is employment generation and nothing else.
Deng Xiaoping also said, let the foreigners come, and I'm using my words, not his, obviously. Let the foreigners come and invest. We can always tell them to go when we've had enough of them. One of the problems in this country, and I've been watching this now since the 80s, is that the people abroad aren't awfully sure that they're welcome, given how some policies are operated. Do we have any questions? Well, the one in the front, I think, is the easiest one to start with, and then one from the back. This here, and then one there, second, and then...
Well, I'm Nikunj. And
could you only questions, no statements, please? Say who you are if you'd like to, and if you want to direct the question, then direct it.
Okay. So,
introduce yourself.
yeah, I'm Nikunj and I represent the Dealers Association, the Vehicle Dealers Association. And my question is to the entire panel. And it's mostly to do with rural distress. Is the government taking some immediate steps to address the rural distress, and specifically things like increasing the minimum support price? Because unless the farmer has money in hands, I don't think consumption is going to go up, and unless consumption goes up, industry doesn't go up.
See, increasing the MSP, I don't think that is the only solution. Out of 29 Indian states, how many states are procuring under MSP? Haryana, Punjab, Andhra, some southern states. Bihar, this year, they could hardly procure 10 lakh metric ton of paddy, whereas the target was 30 lakh metric ton. So, MSP is important, no doubt. But how many items of agriculture are there in the MSP? And how many states are procuring under MSP? So what Mr. Narendra Modi have announced, Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana. So whatever they are producing, if there is a calamity, if there is a distress, if there is a rainfall, if there is something else happens to the agriculture. So the Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana, and what PM has announced that they are planning that how the farmers' income can be doubled in the next 5 years. And they are going in that direction, how to provide water to the fields, how to provide cheap inputs to the agriculture. They are more important. And this year you will find that for the first time in this country, there was no shortage of urea. There was no black marketing in urea. Only by a single step of Narendra Modi, neem-coated urea, because most of the urea that was diverted to the industries, and because by a single step of neem-coated urea, there was in the entire country, there was no lathi charge, there was no chaos. So this rural distress. So Prime Minister has announced many of the schemes regarding soil health card, regarding irrigation, regarding how to this Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana, and then Kshati-Purti Yojana, compensation to the farmers if there is a calamity, that has also been increased. So all these things are, what Mr. Rajiv Kumar said is very important, that Marathwada area is having the highest number of sugar mills or more sugar mills, and whereas in Bihar, which has a plenty of water, so Bihar don't have a new sugar mills. In the last 20 years, not a single sugar mill has come to Bihar. So this type of imbalance in the economy, imbalance in the agriculture. And what was the need of Punjab growing this dhan, this rice and paddy? Odisha, Bengal, Bihar, which those states which have plenty of water, if they are growing paddy, it is nice. But a state like Punjab, which don't have a water, in a Bihar, if you dig only 20 feet, you can get water. There is no crisis of water, either drinking or for agriculture in Bihar. But the highest paddy growing state is Andhra Pradesh, highest paddy growing state is Punjab, but it is not very easy to change the dynamics of agriculture. It takes time. And so Narendra Modi and even the previous government, they tried that how to eastern part of this country, Haryana, Punjab, Bihar, Odisha, Bengal, Eastern UP, these states, they have a more potential, and they can contribute much more to the Indian economy. So it takes time, but the government of India is moving in the direction. So how to tackle this agriculture distress or the distress in the rural areas?
Rajiv, that came up in one of your remarks earlier, and I was going to ask you about it, but we moved on to something else. I mean, you were talking about the problems of the states doing the wrong crops. Can you pick up on that answer and talk about, but how do you get, the problem's fine, but how do you solve it?
The solution is one, not simple. You got 60 years of legacy out here. Farmers class is a class which is, politically highly mobilized. But I'm sure, I'm convinced that the MSP is not the route towards following this problem. You have to let agriculture live to a large extent without government intervention. Agriculture, by the way, is the most government-intervened sector in this country. The input prices, the output prices, everything, the land market, everything is controlled by the government in this country. But for agriculture, the beginning has to be made. The beginning has to be made by shifting from land-intensive crops in India to labor-intensive crops like horticulture, like floriculture, like orchards, etc., and to dairy and poultry, etc., which is also where the demand is rising. It's an amazing situation where you have 60 lakh tons of stocks rotting away, and the prices of pulses and fruits and others keep rising. But just let me just say one thing, and I finish here. The beginning of agricultural solution is to take labor away from agriculture. And there I beg to disagree with Jaijit's pessimism. If just in one sector like tourism, you could increase your intake of foreign tourists from 7 million, which it is today, to nearer 50 million, which is what China gets, you will be able to absorb a huge amount of labor and a huge amount of skilled workers and unskilled workers. But the point is that there is, in our country, both a export pessimism and a labor employment pessimism for some reason. And I don't think we give, and again, we will change that. We start focusing on employment as our only objective in this country.
We've got 3 minutes and 43 seconds left, so a 10-second question.
My name is Krishan Khanna. Question is to Sushil ji. All the speakers have spoken about agriculture, unemployment, and skills. Sir, China has 350,000 skill building centers in rural China, 600 courses, they train 50 million. What Rajiv is saying, not only agriculture, agriculture-related industries. So can we do this in India? We can.
And the question, please.
The question is, can we do this in India?
See, we should not compare India with China.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because the kind of leadership, the kind of political system they are having. And most of the people here sitting here, they must have gone to China and they know what kind of democracy they are having. So in a democracy, things will move. It can't move. I always say democracy is like an elephant. Elephant can't move very fast. So, but in a democratic setup, you can achieve, but it will take time. So you can't compare what has happened in China. And I'm not an economist and not an expert on China, other things, but I've been to China and I know, and I can say, what China has achieved in 60 years, it is a miracle, it is tremendous what they've achieved, but for a country like India, it is not that easy. So we should not compare everything with China, that only I can say.
I really agree with that, because comparing things with China gives people an excuse for not doing things. Oh, well, China can do it. They can build highways. India can't, so we have a problem, so we needn't build highways. Or for all sorts of reasons, one ought to forget the comparison. Did you want to say something, Jaijit, just now?
I just want to put a remark on the previous point.
We've got 1 minute and 50
on agriculture.
seconds.
Yeah, very quickly. I think, in fact, 2 quick points. Is one, the agricultural distortions will go away only when we take out the policy distortions. The agricultural distortions came in because of policies. Free electricity in Punjab being one case in point. The second, just rounding off the answer to the previous question, 2.1 trillion rupees has been earmarked to be spent for rural infrastructure in this year itself. And that's hopefully going to help in diminishing the rural distress that exists. Hopefully that 2.1 trillion will be spent on the rural roads, irrigation infrastructure, and so on. So just want to round up that, the answer to that question.
Right. We could do another quick question if there is one more. Is there one more question? No? You're an expert in transformational governance, and I really wanted to ask you what transformational governance is. It's in your blurb, your bio.
So,
You said to me outside, but it depends what you're transforming it to.
One of the things I was tempted to first say when you introduced me as a consultant is, as a consultant, let me first distinguish two different industries and two different businesses. One is the business of governance, and the other is business of politics. The two are two different businesses completely. It's almost like saying if you're good as a student, you'll be made a headmaster. Now, the business of teaching is very different from being a business of student. The structure that we have is somebody is good in politics, they'll end up doing the governance part of it, which requires two different KRAs. And therein lies some of the paradox in terms of transformation. A lot of times we hear that the system in the government is not working. Well, it's working for the purpose it's being driven for. It's just that it's being driven for a very different purpose. Now, if you step back and going back to your question in terms of what do we mean by government transformation, the government is getting challenged by a large demographic transformation that's happening. The three-worded phrase, Dil Mange More, that's what the young people want. It was made famous by Captain Bhattacharya the day before he died. And along with it, there is a pressure for technology that's coming in. There's a huge technological pressure. That's leading to new models of governance. That's leading to new models of financing the governance itself. It's not just tax dependent. There's non-tax revenue that the government has to start looking at. People are not really happy with the kinds of taxation measures. And Modi ji was, in fact, looking at the GST as a mechanism to have a more regulated taxation regime, which is yet to see the light of the day. And these two trends, which is the demographic trend and the technological models coming in, is also having a pressure in terms of the regulatory changes that needs to be brought in. To give an example, if I bring in 3D printing and I start printing things at home, then who's manufacturing and who's paying the excise tax? I need to resolve that first. We have seen the regulatory issues around Uber as a taxi service provider. There'll be regulatory issues around use of drone. The moment a drone goes up in Delhi, you're violating a rule and you'll be behind bars. And therefore, you can't really do any innovation in drone. If you want to transfer a heart from Gurgaon to Delhi, I have to block a lane and create a green lane. Instead, can I put it on a drone and send it? But regulatory issues stop me from doing that. And those are the transformational issues that one has to look at. And I just see that we have almost run out of time. So I'll give it back to you.
I've given another bit of paper saying we've got 5 minutes, but it does say time is up. So thank you all very much. And did you? Okay.
Just one line, just one sentence, which is that we've talked about governance such a lot, and I think it's such a key and so important. But I think the precondition for that is that the distance between the governors and the governed has to be reduced. And the trust between those governed and those governing has to be created. And this whole attitude of the paternalistic state, that the Mai Baap Sarkar or the Parvardigar concept, all of that, has to somehow start disappearing in this country if we want to actually get good governance. And a system of a tripartite coalition between the industry, government, and the civil society, the sooner it can start in a real sense, that is the only way forward, because without achieving that, I'm afraid governance will not improve, because you will try to do it by fiat, and you will try to do it by danda, and that will not work in a democracy.
We have to give way to an ex-minister and a current minister. One, I think, an ex-student leader, and the other one, an ex-banker or financier. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, gentlemen. I would request Mr. S.Y. Qureshi to kindly grace the stage and present the mementos to our esteemed panelists. First and foremost, Mr. Sushil Modi. Can we have a round of applause, please? Up next, Mr. Rajiv Kumar. Mr. Jaijit Bhattacharya. And Mr. John Elliott. Request you all for a group photograph.